I'm sure it sounds special.
Oh, that was so loud.
Very special. I can turn down.
That was
Are
so
you going to
loud.
adjust?
No, I got you and Mark on the same one, so I need you to adjust on your end.
Okay. How's that? Same?
Yeah, Mark,
Better?
you
Worse?
talk.
Testing 1, 2, 4.
You talk, Sean.
Testing one,
Yeah, that's
two,
pretty good.
four. Okay.
That's pretty good.
Cool.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll see you in about 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Buenas a todos, chavales. Otro viernes más con el Star Citizen Live. En este caso va del radar y el escaneo. Buena Bedur. El SLAM no se puede vender en ningún sitio, lamentablemente, Rancor. Deberás de destruir tu nave o reclamarla. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jared Jacoby. Ostras. Pues estaríamos subiéndonos por las paredes, Railker. Fuera el lanzamiento del server mesh. Ya solo con el server mesh, no hace falta llegar a la gold.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd please take your seat, the show will begin shortly.
Damas y caballeros, tomen asiento. Este show empezará en breves.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live, Radar and Scanning Q&A. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, somebody has. It never shows somebody's first.
Bueno, si nunca habéis visto el Star Citizen Live antes, consiste en un episodio semanal que hacen sobre noticias o temas relacionados con el desarrollo y podemos hacer preguntas tanto en directo como hacer preguntas a través de Spectrum.
We introduced some of the changes that are upcoming to the radar scanning and ping systems. We thought we'd follow that up today with a more in-depth conversation with two members of our vehicle tech team. So let's introduce them now. We've got Sean Tracy and Mark Abent. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. Got coffee, ready to roll.
So every show is somebody's first show. I know you guys have been on these things forever and ever and ever, but let's take a minute, introduce yourselves, tell people who you are, what you do for Star Citizen. Mark, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Mark Abent. I'm one of the lead gameplay programmers at the LA studio, and I primarily focus on ship technology and ship gameplay stuff. I work on
Bien, Mark se dedica, pues, es un programador élite de Cloud Imperium Games y se dedica a la tecnología de naves y del gameplay en general.
but in my head, I'm playing it.
Like when you work, do you still do the narration just to yourself while you work?
Yeah, sometimes I do it in meetings and Sean has to tell me to be quiet.
Sean,
That never happens.
Sean, who tells Mark Abent to be quiet, who are you and what else do you do?
Right. So Sean Tracy, I'm the tech director of content at Cloud Imperium Games. Fancy title that really just covers three different jobs. One of the big ones, and the reason I'm here is directing alongside John Crew, Rich Tyra, the vehicle and actor pillars. So that's where vehicle tech team is part of, and because it's over in the LA time zone, I'm pretty one-to-one with Mark day to day as we go. Then on top of that is the tech art and tech animation directorship as a department, and then is the game direction for Theaters War, Arena Commander, and all that.
Bueno, trabaja en vehículos, trabaja en dirección de arte y dirección técnica y bueno, trabaja en un montón de cosas. Trabaja el Sim Tracy, ¿no?
Yesterday, if you haven't seen it, be sure to
Es uno de los pilares de Star Citizen, de la creación de Star Citizen.
yesterday and then go into more detail. Let's start things off with a basic explanation for folks here. What is radar ping scanning? What do they do? How are they different from another? Why?
¿Qué es el radar, el ping, el scanning? ¿Qué hacen cada uno? ¿Cuáles son las diferencias que hay?
Sure. Sean, did you want me to get this or you got it?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You're great.
Cool. So radar, ping, and scan are kind of like bundled together, but they're kind of different concepts. We think of radar as what you currently see within your range. It's your passive contacts. You're flying around.
Bueno, el radar serían los contactos pasivos cuando estás volando alrededor.
Indicating that the thing's there. Whereas ping is more of, I can't see something, I'll ping out and maybe uncover stuff. Now,
Ping sería, pues no puedo ver algo y entonces voy a lanzar un ping a ver si consigo ver algo que no podía ver de forma pasiva,
a
¿no?
little bit of help. The only downside of doing that kind of burst to kind of see more is you kind of reveal that you have done it. So if I
Claro, el tema de hacer un ping también es que una de las contras que tiene es que al mismo tiempo que tú consigues información más allá de lo que ves en el radar pasivo, también eres un foco, o sea, te marcas, ¿no? Aumentas tu señal.
flow is I could ping out, I find some like little blobs, and maybe I could scan it and cover that. Oh, there's something interesting that I want to go into that blob. So I get closer and it appears as a contact, and I maybe multiple contacts, and I could scan those to get other information. So it's a way of expressing in the world what's happening and maybe show some interest that may want the player to go toward that direction or avoid that direction.
All right. Now, the vehicle tech team works on like these core features,
Bueno, el escaneo también sirve pues para conseguir información más detallada y puede llegar a suceder, ¿no?, que si hace un pulso, pues pueda escanear y demás. Y pueda querer habitar esa dirección o tirarse en la dirección, dependiendo de la información a mayores que reciba.
Specific ships are generally the purview of ship designers and the specific ship teams. You guys create the radar and scanning toolbox that they then pick from.
Está diciendo Discolando que preguntas acerca de naves específicas que no sería para este apartado, que ellos simplemente lo que han hecho ha sido crear, bueno, simplemente, lo que han hecho ha sido crear la caja de herramientas para trabajar con el escáner, el radar, el ping.
A lot of questions
That's
about,
correct.
will
Hey,
this
we
ship do
can-
this and will this
We
ship
can
do
make
that?
all the answers you want. They just won't be
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you nailed it there, and it was a little detail within there too. Is that the vehicle tech team wasn't always the vehicle tech team. That only really happened last year. Yeah, last year or so. And actually, scanning and radar was one of the last features, and it gets developed like a feature, and this is just something internal production wise that we deal with now. The intention of the vehicle tech team is that, yes, it's exactly as you described, which is we're working on systems, rolling out systems to content teams, design teams, whatever that is. But this one so happens to be an all-encompassing feature. It's not about marking up every single one of the ships or marking up the entirety of the levels or the space stations or however else. It is still about bringing the system, but it is one of the last anyways. We would call it like a tier 1 feature, like a tier 1 team running it through like a feature team, just because it is a lot of work when it is, because Mark has to not only be a lead programmer, he has to be a product owner at the same time. He's got to chase around a whole bunch of different teams. So that's just the evolution of vehicle tech team.
And not to despair, while today's show is about all ship scanning and all ship radar in general, we do have a show specifically about the ships themselves coming up as part of Fleet Week, and that's just in like 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not a calendar, so it's coming up soon. So save your questions about specific ships. We got that.
Bueno, está diciendo que al final el trabajo del scanning, o sea, de los radares y demás, que es una característica del juego ya avanzada, y que pues ahora mismo pues tendrá un tier 1 o algo así, pero que esto se irá evolucionando con el paso del tiempo. También está comentando de que es mucho curro, y también está comentando Discolando de que en la semana de la Fleet Week, en un par de semanas así, harán un especial sobre naves en el que le podemos preguntar sobre naves y demás. Sobre la marchama, supongo.
Ships pushed to our individual FPS HUDs.
So that's probably a two-parter question. First part, I'm just going to iterate more on the radar technology. So when VTT took this on, we did have a lot of radar and scanning functionality, and even ping, but it was a lot of systems that kind of built up from different designers and different features. And when we took this on, we wanted to unify it across the entire game so that it could be used anywhere by any designer to facilitate different, those original mechanics. Passive, it's on your radar, ping, you go out and find it, and scan, you get information. Whether that's a mission, whether that's on foot, or whether that's on a spaceship, or even on both. So because of that, Star Citizen, you are not just a spaceship, you are a person, and you are a group of people. And in the document for our radar scanning, we do facilitate how and why we want to share information. Now, the technology to do that is there, but it's not available yet for this current iteration. The primary focus is for this upcoming patch will be for ships, because we're going to iterate on developing this tech, basically replace the old system with the new one, and then add on extra features throughout patches.
Bueno, lo que están comentando es la posibilidad de compartir información a base de los escaneos y demás, o de radares, la información de los radares. Dice que la tecnología está actualmente disponible, pero que no es el momento todavía de hacerlo, que lo primero que van a hacer es convertir el antiguo sistema al nuevo sistema primero para las naves.
To a ship or vice versa. Now going back to radar ping and scan, radar again is what's on your, what's near you and what information we could perceive as the person playing. Now, if I'm on a ship, I'm actually going to see different signatures, even different contacts, because it's based on the ship radar. If I have a small little radar, I might see certain, like I'll go with the prospector. It's made for finding mining things. So if I get on foot, my FPS radar might, depending upon my customized loadout, might see different things than what my ship was seeing. So it also depends on what the player has his loadouts on both the ship and on foot are that determine what he sees from his radar and ping. Now, if you do line up both of them, then you'll probably see similar information. But again, your ship is going to have a much more powerful system than one that's on foot. You know, your ship might be able to see something far away on the planet, but you go on foot, you're not going to see it. I mean, unless you have some nuclear power plant, I don't think your radar will be able to see things so that far away. Now, your scan information, that is something we're looking at on how to send that information to and from the player, because that is something you can transfer reliably, because your scanner is meant to just, technically you could have different things.
Claro, lo que están hablando es que, bueno, aparte de que con el sistema, los sistemas que han creado pretenden unificar todo lo que es el sistema de radar, ping, escáner, tanto si vas a pie como si vas a nave o cualquier cosa, ¿no? Que se pongan a utilizar esas herramientas. Y está comentando de que tú, a la hora de ir a pie, vas a ver determinadas cosas dependiendo del equipo que lleves, y en la nave, dependiendo del tipo de nave que lleves, vas a ver diferentes cosas. A la hora de hacer un radar o de lanzar un ping de radar, pues con la nave igual eres capaz de ver algo en la lejanía en el planeta que a pie no eres capaz de verlo, pero puede que identifiques diferente tipo de cosas, ¿no? Lo que sí que sería interesante de compartir, que está comentando que se va a poder hacer en principio, es la información del escáner activo, ¿no? Es decir, cuando recibimos información de cuánta carga tiene la nave o qué armas lleva una nave, etcétera, pues eso que sí que se pueda enviar a los jugadores.
Radar system that just has no no ability to crosstalk with what happens in the ship scanning, because ultimately we're both, and we should be able to transition the data between both. So it was a nice thing to be able to design this together, and it just so happens that the ship stuff was obviously a little further along in terms of the amount of time that's been spent on it over the years, so we were able to get that done first, and then we wait for the FPS and everything coming up behind it.
Yeah. We've been talking in general, almost since the beginning of Star Citizen's development, about this notion of when you're exploring, when you're out in the great unknown and you're scanning and you're looking to discover things like jump points or wrecks or anything else that can be found. The idea that you can save that data and then transmit it to somebody else, probably for a healthy amount of credits. Is that still on the table? Is that still our intention?
That is 100% on the table and still our intent.
Está comentando de las posibilidades de poder escanear o buscar puntos de salto u otros puntos de interés, poder almacenar esa información, y que se habló de poder en un futuro pues enviar esa información a alguien o vendérsela por dinero. Si eso sigue sobre la mesa, dice que 100% sigue planeado que eso suceda.
Hornet tracker to a Carrack or whatever have more sensitive radars and ping tech available to them?
They can. So a lot of the work that we've done is to talk with designers on what information they would like to have across different ships, even on foot, and what type of upgrade paths you would want radars and scanners to have. And a lot of those type of things usually amounted to different type of signatures, the strengths at which you can see them at, even the strengths of how resistant they are to ambient, even the types. So we've unlocked a lot of information and a lot of ways to categorize information so that designers could make more stronger radar, more stronger ping, or more stronger scanners, or unlock specific information. We've also incorporated different ways that we could potentially unlock players to filter out that stuff.
Claro, están comentando de que han desglosado, bueno, una cantidad de serie de filtros o de capacidades de poder dar más poder a las señales de diferentes naves, porque están preguntando qué pasaría con una Carla, con una Hornet Tracker, si tendrían más capacidades para poder escanear algo o poder detectar ciertas cosas. Incluso pues que existiría la habilidad en la herramienta de poder que las naves a la hora de tal que se pueda configurar para que puedan acceder a determinado tipo de información que otras no pueden, o hacer en ciertos espectros, digamos, para detectar determinadas cosas que tengan mayores capacidades, que se podría configurar de esa manera.
Tools to make all the stealth kind of gameplay, or really all the electronic warfare that we've been expecting to have within Star Citizen work as expected and as intended.
And with that, we've been also in talks with different balance teams on what values these things do and how they interfere with each other so that we could get that electronic warfare, we could get that stealth gameplay. I keep going back to this and
Claro, han tenido también conversaciones de revisar cómo interfieren las señales unas con otras, tanto el ambiente y demás, ¿no? Y bueno, pues que eso también potenciaría, abriría la puerta para la guerra electrónica y también para la mecánica de Steel, ¿no?
more sensitive to seeing those contacts further out than another one because it's ambient volume. It could pierce through it more than another type of radar. The downside could be more power. Just depends what design wants.
I just want Goose to talk to me. Talk to me, Goose. It's not one pair, it's two pair, right? No, I always found that to be great. But it is such a, it's obvious, but it takes some doing, especially when you've got three different sort of signature types, how you call them, how you actually merge them. And in the end, the challenge is how you balance them all. Is the first time we even took a look at it, what that.
Claro, están comentando de que al final parece algo obvio, pero que es mucho trabajo porque son tres tipos de señales distintas, la sección de crucero, las emisiones electromagnéticas y el infrared, ¿no? Los infrarrojos, el calor, o sea. Y luego pues que se podría tener un radar que, por ejemplo, tuviese más potencia de penetración en el ambiente y que sea capaz de detectar pues en ciertas zonas que otras naves no pueden, que sea capaz de detentar con sus sensores a las naves, pero a costa de gastar más potencia, depende de la configuración. Y está comentando Sin Tracy que al final es un reto el tema de equilibrar todo eso, de balancear todas esas cosas, ¿no?
That there's always cross section. So cross section is almost a visual thing. So if you're getting up to 100 meters from a ship, you obviously see it. And if you can see it, he can probably see you. Now, if you're behind him, different story, right? You're probably not going to get called out, but you may be picked up from CS in terms of your radar. So you are, you're going to want to try to occlude yourself. So if you're approaching to 0 to 100 meters behind asteroids and stuff, yeah, you're going to get it right up to him and he's going to have no idea you're there. But I don't know how you're maneuvering with all your stuff turned off, so yeah. It really depends. But all those tools are there now and
Claro, están hablando de que efectivamente si tú te escondes detrás de un asteroide y apagas toda la nave y maniobras, que no sabe cómo te la vas a apañar para tener todo apagado, pero bueno, eso es otro tema. Pero podrías aparecerle por sorpresa a un tío detrás si no te ve, ¿no?
So if something flies in there, you're not going to see it. But if you get close enough, if your radar detects cross section, you'll be able to see it. So, it really depends on what the other player's radar is and what your mission is doing to determine what you can see and how.
And of your ship, like
Yes.
when we're talking about cross section, it really is cross section. Like if you are horizontal to a guy versus being top down, your cross section is way less, like way less.
It is because it's
Claro, están diciendo de que a la hora de detectar la señal, que bueno, la cross section es la forma de la nave, ¿no? Digamos, la forma de la nave en sí. Entonces, que eso, si el radar lo detecta, pues entonces serás capaz de verlo, obviamente, cuando llegue al punto de que detecta la sección de crucero, pero que incluso, dice Saint Trace, efectivamente es sección de crucero, es decir, si tú estás volando en horizontal, puede que no te vean, y si tú te pones así, sí, o sea, sí te detectará el radar, o sea, que llega hasta ese punto, ¿no?
upside down.
Then it's loud, yeah.
Then it's super loud.
But a Gladius being a good, decent fighter, like that coming at you nose first, it has a very small cross section, so you may not pick it up. That's why the question is like, it really depends.
Depends.
But that's what's so cool about it. That's again, that's the system we wanted to bring in here.
That's why we make everything systemic.
With that depends, we also wanted to add some stuff onto the UI to kind of help you with that. So one of the things on there is what your signatures are emitting versus the ambient levels that are happening. So it kind of gives you an idea of how well seen you are versus what's happening in the environment.
Claro, dice que una de las cosas que quieren introducir en la interfaz es que aparezcan tus emisiones en la pantalla versus a las emisiones que hay en el ambiente, para que tengas una idea de cuán bien te pueden llegar a ver los enemigos, ¿no?
Like a good example, and this is more for FPS because they have the dB signature, so like sound. But if you're in a room that has a generator running, it's super loud or whatever, that ambient sound is going to be like full bar. And as you run, your ambient's going to move up and down like this as it is, but it's probably staying below. So that means you're stealth. You're not detectable easily, anyways, or passively from somebody else's radar.
Claro, está hablando en el caso de que si entras a una habitación muy ruidosa y tú vas caminando, vas a tener como un umbral de ruido muy grande del ambiente y tu umbral va a ser más pequeño, entonces vas a pasar casi indetectable por ahí, ¿no? Que vas a estar en sigilo.
Everything that we show in ISC is still a work in progress. If we waited for everything to be final art, you'd have one episode the week before a patch went live, and that's all you'd ever get. So always keep in mind that when you watch something on ISC, especially when it's earlier in the quarter, that you're looking at a very, very work in progress thing.
And
so
it's an interesting thing with the UI is that UI that we actually shown in that video for the scanner and the ping is actually not the ship UI. We have a whole new spectrum of ship UI that we want to do for scanning and radar that we just not ready to deliver yet. So we're actually utilizing the FPS scanning UI. So you actually get a glimpse of what's to come in our ships now.
Tell your
Claro, está comentando que la interfaz de escaneo y demás que nos han enseñado que en realidad es el escaneo FPS. Advierte Colando que esto siempre es trabajo en progreso, ¿no? Que si los programas que hiciesen fueran todos definitivos, pues veríamos un programa solo antes de justo del lanzamiento del parche. Lo que está comentando es que realmente lo que vemos ahora mismo es la interfaz del FPS, lo que hemos visto en el Insight, y que para naves tienen un espectro de cosas preparadas que todavía no están preparados para entregar, ¿no?
The design of that, and I know Tony very specifically is very, very keen to talk through that and to work that design out. So I wouldn't say much there. In terms of the system, though, yeah, definitely. The system itself, we've got basically a data bank of objects that can be stored, because short of selling it as an item or giving it to other players or whatnot, we've also got to do a couple other things even before that will lend itself to it. So like the first one is being able to share contacts and all that kind of stuff within your ship to just other people in your ship, like a gunner or something like that. So number one, we got to do that. Number two, we got to be able to share stuff to party. Like if you got a friend in the party, you got whatever. We want to make sure that we're kind of going the direction and to use a sort of a battlefield term, they called it squad sight. But it's basically like, everybody in the same squad can kind of see the same stuff. They're sharing radar targets, and how the system kind of deals with that, because, you may be good at detecting this, but this guy's better at detecting this. I think it's super cool because actually the party can be laid out in such a way that you've got a ship that's really, really good at scanning CS. You've got another one that's better at IM. There's another one that's good at EM. And then there's another one that's actually, the loudest signature in your group. So it's actually clouding, the rest of you guys being stealth together. So I love that there's that dynamic, but we've got to get there.
Vale, dice que quieren pues llegar a que se puedan compartir contactos entre primero personas de la misma nave, luego entre miembros de la party, para pues eso, en un escenario de campo de batalla tener esa información. Y también el hecho de poder llegar a jugar con, que quizás tengas diferentes naves, una que tiene mucha emisión, otra que hace mucho ruido, otra que es gigante, que tiene una sección de crucero gigante, y que con la combinación de esas, pues que puedas utilizarlas para, pues eso, para ese juego de ocultación, ¿no? Que nos estuvieron comentando, pero que todavía tienen que llegar ahí, o sea que todavía está verde, ¿no?
Having like a radar globe and then being able to interact with what your actual radar is doing. There's different designs on that, but the one that I'm more familiar with is the scanning MFD. We've been going through it. I'll backpedal and say this is not something for 3.14. This is something that's up and coming. We've been in talks with UI and other teams on what that MFD is going to do and what information should it have. So going back to scanning, you're going to unlock a bunch of information. You're going to, if I lock mine or go to a mineable and I find that it has gold, or if I go to Sean's ship and I find that it has a weapon or even gold, that information gets stored in my object databank on the ship. That MFD's goal is to show you that information. So if I go to scan a ship, I'll get the nice UI and I'll see all the information there. But if Sean's gone, I can't look at that information again, hence the MFD.
Claro, están hablando de una MFD, un display multifunción para las naves dedicado al escaneo, como las pantallitas que tenemos ahora para bloquear armas y demás. Y entonces, si nosotros escaneamos, por ejemplo, a alguien, ¿no? Y es alguien, pues recibimos esa información y luego no está, luego se va, nosotros tendremos esa información almacenada en la nave y podremos revisarla a través de esa MFD. Lo mismo pasaría con una mina o algo así, ¿no?
Even maybe have a way of transferring it somehow. Because that's going to be the ultimate thing is, what do I do with it? Do I bring it with me on foot? Do I transfer it to another party or do I sell it? Or can someone, I think Calix had the idea of another designer on VTT. He wants to steal it. I could go and scan it, sneak aboard my ship and steal it. So why not? It's on the ship. We just have to have ways of accessing it. There's a ton of ideas that we want to have fun with.
Bueno, dice que hay un montón de ideas con las que se van a divertir, pero el hecho de también de poder robar esa información, ¿por qué no, no?
The co-pilot or another seat in a multi-crew ship be able to do the scanning and stuff like that. And that just comes down to operator modes, right?
Yes and no. So each of the seats, as of right now, they have their own operator self-context. So if I'm piloting, I could be flying, and if someone guy's in the back with a scanner on his turret, he could be in the scan mode. Now, if he scans something, it gets saved into the ship's databank. And what's cool about that is if maybe me and Sean are in a cutlass, he's scanning someone and I'm in combat shooting and flying. Whatever information he unlocks, I'll see it too. And this is there in 314. Like everyone in the same ship, in the same seats, the scan information is.
Ojo con esto para la Hammerhead, porque está diciendo, si Sean y yo vamos en una cutlass y él escanea desde el artillero y yo estoy ocupado en el piloto, y yo voy a recibir yo voy a tener acceso a esa información desde el piloto también. Eso mola mucho.
The send and receive to different people.
And folks will be learning more about operator modes and how that affects multi-crew next week on ISC. Can we please have the functionality to choose or filter what we actually scan for?
Good news.
Good news. Good news.
So scanner-wise, that's still in a discussion of how much the players can actually have control over. But design-wise, designed to set up to be medical information or law information, and that determines what you unlock. There's still discussion on what to allow players to filter out in that scan mode. Radar, we actually did a lot of back-end fundamental stuff to allow players. Now, there's no UI, so you won't be able to access this 314, but the foundation, because remember, vehicle tech, we build the foundation of stuff, is there. And we have a way for players to turn on and off certain signatures, even turn off certain contact types. One of the discussions we've had and seen across the community too is they want to be able to turn off certain contact types because you get the Port All-Star and there's like 1 billion turrets. Well, why not allow you to turn it off or have it off by default and then you could turn it on? So behind the scenes, designers set up what kind of contacts you can see, and the player can then opt in on which ones he wants to have. We just need to have a UI to expose that information. Maybe that could be the radar MFD. It really depends how in depth we want to get it, but the functionality behind the scenes, again, is there.
Vale, con el tema de poder filtrar los tipos de cosas que podemos escanear, dice buenas noticias. La buena noticia es que hemos estado trabajando en ello, que está disponible esa característica. Lo que pasa es que no está disponible todavía para usarla por los jugadores, no está todavía para la 3.14 y no sabe, porque está habiendo discusiones aparte de eso, de por ejemplo de no tener por qué ver las torretas de cuando te acercas a por Olisar, pues bueno, minerales, recolectables o naves de combate, poder filtrar todo eso, ¿no? Pues al final que esa opción no saben todavía si podría aparecer a través de la interfaz de escaneo o podría estar en la pantalla multifunción de la nave, el poder hacer ese tipo de cosas, ¿no?
Good news is we actually had the graphics and VFX teams help out concept new ideas of how we want to have this blob. So we did get rid of the box. I'm sorry, the box is gone. And it got replaced with more of fuzziness, that there's some object within there. Because the whole idea of ping is that we don't know what's there or where all of it is. It's more of a general area. There's something here or
Claro, están hablando de que se han cargado el cubo, que ya no tenemos cubo, chavales, o no vamos a tener cubo, y que el tema de cuando hagamos un radar, un ping de radar, que vamos a ver como una especie de zona de interés, pero que no quiere enseñar una zona concreta, sino que tiene que ser una zona relativamente amplia, ¿no? Que tengamos que investigar.
Move the VFX to be more on the player's lens to indicate that it's more of a system that's happening and relaying the information to you on the 2D, because it's not a 3D in a world effect that happens. But the old effect was kind of 3D. Now, we didn't quite get all of that there because there's some stuff we want to do with the player ping and radar. So we kind of have a hybrid right now where it's still in the 3D world, but it looks like what we're going towards with that on lens VFX. So we did get rid of the box. It is...
Están diciendo de que quieren hacer como una especie de movida de lentillas, no, de efecto de lentillas, que dice que no quieren hacerlo como en ese 3D que hay ahora. Dice que ahora mismo el efecto visual que sigue estando en ese tipo rollo 3D, pero que quieren hacer otro tipo de efecto, otro tipo de sensación de que algo está ahí, pero sin que parezca que está en 3 dimensiones, un holograma en el mundo, ¿no?
And we're improving the effects, and as Jared said earlier, this is not final. We're continuing to develop the VFX. So when you guys see it, please put in your comments, because I'm sure we will take your feedback and make modifications as it goes.
Claro, cuando veamos el efecto que han puesto nuevo, que pongamos feedback para tirar en la dirección que nosotros queramos, ¿no? Que a la comunidad le guste.
Described it really is depending on the distance, depending on the signal of the thing, it'll be wider or more narrow. It's meant to be rezzing in. That's kind of the thing. You know there's something there. You just don't know what it is. You don't even know how it's...
Claro, dependiendo de la señal a lo que estemos escaneando, pues será más amplio o menos amplio. Tú sabes que hay algo ahí, pero no sabes dónde está, ¿no? O sea, es una ubicación general nos va a dar, ¿no?
get a contact. And so basically, if you're coming into a system and you're willing to kind of give away your position, because if you hit ping, that pretty much is going to notify everybody that gets hit by the ping that they've been hit by a ping. So it's like walking into a room and going, hello, and then somebody way off in the side goes, hello, and you're like, okay, they're over there. But that's the whole idea with this, is that there's this broad phase ping, then you have passive radar. As you get closer,
Claro, luego también hay que tener en cuenta que a la hora de tú lanzar un ping, que tienes que estar dispuesto a hacerlo, ¿no? Porque en el momento que hagas eso, que va a ser como entrar en una habitación y decir ¡hola! Y entonces que te van a identificar al momento, ¿no? Que van a saber que lo has escaneado. O sea, que lo has escaneado, que has tirado un ping, ¿no?
We talked a lot about ship radar and scanning, because that's what, you know, what's coming with 314. FPS radar and stuff will follow shortly after. Will FPS radar be able to discover harvestables, minables? What will it be able to discover? What can you tell us?
That pretty much goes back to, you know, what the designers want to set up different scanners and radars to be. I have a feeling we're going to, the first, you know, when you first get the system up and running, you kind of want to expose everything, and then you want to decrease it down and make different variants to indicate different upgrade paths. So that's kind of what we're doing for the ships right now. So all the ships are going to have basically the similar radar and scanning, and then different ones will get exposed and broken out to be stronger and more flexible on what they can do, because now the system allows it. So I imagine the same thing's going to happen with FPS. Now,
claro, está comentando de que para el radar, el escáner y demás, que lo que va a suceder es que se va a el escáner, la nave van a tener el escáner con todo lo que se puede hacer con el escáner. O sea, se va a ver de todo al principio. Y de ahí van a ir fragmentándolo y dividiéndolo entre las diferentes posibilidades. Pero para empezar, pues para probar la tech van a hacer de esta manera. Con el tema de cuerpo a cuerpo, de FPS, perdón, de a pie, va a suceder lo mismo al principio.
And you could ping them out and find them. And then I'm sure there will be upgrade paths that the mining team or even FPS team will decide to branch out or restrict other ones to focus more on a goal. Because I mean, you can make a scanner or radar more focused on bounty hunting versus mining. Having one to do both is more of a gateway to make the branching paths work.
Yeah. And to expand a tiny bit on the harvestables, the minables. The whole intention with this system and a big part of the changes and why it took as long as it did was it needed to be designer friendly enough that it was an arbitrary component that we can add to any entity. So like if we want to just make a box, have a crazy EM, IR, DB, whatever, we just set it on the entity. It's all very straightforward as far as a designer is concerned. Sorry, you hear my cat?
Yes, you definitely hear the cat.
Yeah, she wants to do scanning. So we could just add these components on these arbitrary ones, and it's all up to us what that signature is and how strong that is and what entities get them. So it's nice because again, for squadron and things like this, you can have mission components or mission entities can have these. You can add them to pretty much anything.
Ya está comentando que gracias a que la tecnología está desarrollada, pues pueden poner emisión a casi cualquier cosa, una caja si quieren, y esto pues será útil también para poder, pues en Escuadrón 42 hacer una misión, hacer que un objeto sea destacado a través del radar y demás, ¿no?
You know, in the past that we had that Xeno event, we had a little bit of radar scanning. It was mostly trying to hook it up to an existing system that didn't quite support it, and the designers got really far. But the new system will be a lot more flexible. So if we were to go down that path again, they could relay more information and unlock the mission better based on what information you get and how quickly you get based on your radar or your scanner that you have. So the designers now have a lot more open-endedness of what information they want to give to players. And especially once we have more branching paths, that determines what information you get. So it's cool because if you have a medical scanner, maybe if you scan this thing for a mission, you're going to uncover a different path than if someone has a bounty hunter scanner. Now, these aren't real scanners right now, but it's the idea of what design.
Claro, está diciendo que la idea en un futuro será que efectivamente si una persona que tenga un escáner médico pues descubra un camino diferente que un bounty hunter, aunque no sea una realidad ahora, pero es una idea para el futuro.
Just holding a button.
Yes and no. So we've gone through different ideas of what it means to be a skill-based. And there's some ideas to get it to there. But what we wanted to focus on is, again, getting it to working where everyone knows how it works. And once we get to that level, then we can maybe add extra things that make a skillful player unlock information.
Claro, están comentando de la posibilidad de que sea una mecánica que tenga algún tipo de skill, ¿no? De habilidad que aprender para poder utilizarla mejor por parte nuestra. Y comenta de que en un principio la idea es hacer una forma general de radar, escáner y demás, que todo el mundo conozca, todo el mundo sepa cómo funciona, y una vez eso es establecido, quizás llegar más allá y hacer algún tipo de especialización para descubrir ciertas...
On your radar and you scan it, you may not get all the information about that object unless you get closer, just because the emissions that it's making is off the edge that you can't quite see it really good. So you could see Sean you can see his ship, but maybe you can't see his contents, and you have to sneak up on him to make your signatures not too far out, so you could scan him to see if he has anything better. So there is a bit of emergent gameplay that comes out of there, but the whole process itself, skill-based, is still ongoing on what that means and how we could deliver it to a player.
Okay.
And again,
Claro, el tema de cualquier tipo de habilidad relacionada con el escaneo a mayores de lo básico está siendo desarrollada todavía, no hay nada definitivo, ¿no?
A lot of it too is we'll watch what players do and maybe add different things for different skill sets.
Yeah, I think there's still a couple layers in there that do have. There's a bunch of player agency now, and whether or not you want to call that skill or not, it really depends situationally what it is. But they can focus scan on it. They'll know what the interference is according to the signal of the scan target. So again, if you got a lot of interference, you're going to want to focus more, and that's again a little bit of a skill. You've got to know to do that, and if you don't know to do that, you're going to take that much longer to scan. So that's just speaking of the scanning independently, but like just again, the whole electronic warfare suite, there's plenty of skill involved. And a lot of it has to do with just situational awareness and knowing yourself, right?
Claro, está diciendo que también habría cierta habilidad a la hora de ser consciente de lo que te rodea y de la situación en la que estés a la hora de escanear, ¿no? Si te tienes que centrar más en un punto determinado o que eres consciente de las emisiones que hay alrededor, y que dice que la guerra electrónica que va a ser un conjunto completo de habilidades diferentes y también situacionales.
Can go determines how well you could sneak up on someone and scan them to relay that information back, or just go all hands on board and try to take over that ship. But if you have a ship like a Hammerhead that's emitting something crazy, you're not going to be able to sneak up on someone because you're just loud.
Not with that attitude.
Claro, está diciendo que si tú tienes, por ejemplo, una nave como una Hammerhead, no podrás espiar a alguien sin que te pille, ¿no? Porque una Hammerhead tiene una misión del horror, o sea, que simplemente harás demasiado ruido, ¿no?
Those decisions on the way in.
We talked earlier in the show, Mark, about Kirk and his test level with the gas cloud that has all the EM interference and stuff like that. Do we know? I realize this is a question for the environment team and not for you, but I'm gonna ask because folks in chat are asking. Do we have an idea of when that stuff might actually make it into the persistent universe? Jump from a test level to the real deal?
Hopefully soon, TM. So what?
Dice que cuándo llegará el tema de los efectos de las nubes de gas y demás a la hora de involucrar la oclusión de los radares, ¿no? El que moleste los radares y demás. Y dice de las emisiones y demás, que haya interferencias. Y dice que esperemos que es un TM. Así que es un TM.
Even if you're really up close to it, you'll eventually see it. And then there's more of an environment ambient, where this one is you have to be above it in order to see the object. So in order to know what those values that we need are, we need to have reasonable signature generation across the board. And the first pass of that is going to be working with VET on what emissions should we be seeing so that we could get reasonable ranges for ping, for radar passives, and also for scanning. But once you're there, then we could take those values and plug them into the environment so that you could have more stealthier areas, like an asteroid field could completely hide CS and you're completely loud with EM and IR. But we have to be careful what those values are because we want them at a range that makes it harder to see and not completely blind players.
Claro, están comentando de que a la hora de, por ejemplo, tú estar en un campo de asteroides, que tienen que desarrollar la tecnología, los valores, dar los valores necesarios, ¿no? Para que efectivamente pues se puedan ocultar naves entre asteroides y tal, pero tienen que tener cuidado para que no sea demasiado exagerado.
But 314 wise, we will have ambient level within the PU.
Yes.
So,
Pero en la 3.14 tendremos ambient level, o sea, tendremos interferencias.
side of it is kind of moot. So there will be an ambient level plus coming from the ships.
Chad is like, Jared asked a one question. It's my show. I'm the boss. I can do it every once in a while. There's a lot of good information in there. Let's see. Will we be able to scan planets to see what resources are on it, like life forms, percent of oxygen, water, weapons?
¿Seremos capaces de escanear planetas para saber qué tipo de climatología tienen, recursos, vida?
So
Can we Star
answer
Trek
that
this?
one-
Can we Star Trek this, Mark?
Yes, of course. I wish. So one of the big fundamental things that we've done in our tech for the scanning is trying to think of how we could get anything scannable and what and how we could unlock that information. So we built out a system to allow us to create ways of getting information, either through async calls or through immediate data. Like cargo takes a while to get, so when you're scanning it, you may not get it right away because we have to go send it to a server, which sends it to another server that eventually comes back to you. So having a planet be able to be scannable to tell you that information is achievable, because we have that whole system there and we could put it in to unlock that information and send it to the player. Now, whether or not we're going to add that is a good question. That's where Vehicle Tech team builds out the technology to allow other teams to use those foundations to add that information. So while it's possible, I can't say, yes, that's something that's going to go there. But I know how kind of the behind the scenes of the planet works, and the resources that are there is something we could obtain. So maybe in the future that is something we could spot to the player.
Claro, están diciendo de que la tecnología sería posible hacerlo, el poder dar ese tipo de información de un planeta. Pero bueno, teniendo en cuenta que tú cuando, por ejemplo, vas a escanear la carga de una nave, te lleva un tiempo hacerlo y tienes que insistir, ¿no? Para que te dé bien la información correcta. Teniendo varias cosas en cuenta, pero la pregunta sería si lo vamos a meter, ¿no? Si vamos a meter esa clase de información disponible a los jugadores. Quizás en un futuro para minables podría ser una opción, pero es algo que tendrían que conversar, que ahora mismo no puedo decir que sí. Aunque la tecnología lo permitiría, la que tienen creada.
Star Marine. With the introduction of FPS radars, will we also see the removal of God Eye bounty markers for PvP bounties?
It's going to be a question for the PvP bounty guys, I guess. I would assume so, because the whole thing with bounty, part of the gameplay is finding them, right? So it's not super fun if you if you have this this infinitely long and always on screen, go here.
Están comentando si con este tipo de cosas nuevas de escaneo, radar y demás, podremos... O sea, desaparecerá el ojo de Dios en las misiones de Bounty, ¿no? Que aparezca un marcador en la cabeza de los jugadores. Y dice que sí, que obviamente eso irá desapareciendo, que tendrás que buscarlo, que no tiene sentido. O sea, parte de la mecánica de Bounty Hunter precisamente es tener que molestarse en buscar al objetivo.
On you again, you're going to change the stealth gameplay stuff, right? You're not going to be loud. You're not going to be going into systems pinging and all that kind of stuff. So I would expect as much. But yeah, we have to see as the FPS stuff comes on.
Yep.
Well, I guess this is that
Bueno, al final, con el Bounty Hunter en el futuro también, si tú eres un criminal, procurarás ocultar su señal. No irás haciendo el cabra por ahí, dando señales y tal. O sea, irás a procurar ser oculto lo máximo posible.
Upgrade paths and bring it into other systems. So at the time that was made, radar and scanning couldn't give them that information or way to do any way of uncovering stuff or going to find where that bounty is. So it's now available. So maybe that is something that could get exposed so that you ping out and maybe you kind of go, okay, he's over here. But again, that's going to be more of the feature team working on that particular.
Claro, dice que el tema de la tecnología que han entregado, pues ahora con los escáneres hay la posibilidad que no había antes, que sería precisamente poder tirar un pulso y ver que puede estar por aquí el objetivo, no puede estar por una zona determinada. Pero dice que eso sería del equipo de características para ver si quieren utilizar las herramientas que han creado para hacer ese tipo de mecánica.
Radar is based 100% on the signatures and the ambient. And we do have, I was saying, environmental ambience and nearby of another object emitting. But there's also kind of a third one. And this is when a chaff is emitted, it actually generates a volume of ambience. So you can't see in between it, in it, or out of it. So if someone makes a big enough ambient field, that's how chaff blocks out you, like a missile lock, or how you're actually able to see that object. So bringing that emerging gameplay of how we can make, maybe those little bits of ambient fields around is something that actually was talked about. There was a concept of a radar jammer, which literally, if you activate it, just spits out a bunch of ambient fields around you. We did something similar with the interdiction, where you jam and it blocks things from quantum traveling. We could literally do the same thing with radar where you blind stuff
Claro,
around it. It's things that are
están diciendo que podrían hacer lo mismo que han hecho para deshabilitar el Quantum, que podrían hacer algo para atorar el radar y llenarlo de señal ambiente, o sea, de tanto ruido que no sea capaz de detectar nada. Podría haber esa posibilidad también.
its purpose, and then we'll start utilizing it. And then the other thing is interference with scanning. So we do have stuff in our design doc that we're going to bring forth through next patches as interfering with scanning, because if you're scanning something and your ship has precious cargo or even stolen stuff, we want you to be able to kind of block that so that there's counter interference, so that if security
Claro, está también otra de las cosas que habría sería la posibilidad de poder interferir, hacer interferencias a los escáneres. Si tú tienes alguna carga valiosa que quieras proteger, de alguna manera poder defenderte de esa detección y poder hacer interferencias para que no sean capaces de verte ese contenido.
system has a way of doing it. We just have to incorporate that on the feature teams or on ships. And way of interfering with scan is stuff we're going to be introducing through different patches.
Yeah, so yeah, Mark pretty much touched on all the active, all the active sort of ECM stuff that we have, which is, the chaff works like an ECM thing, electronic countermeasure. Right now, it just happens to have the exact same signature that we do on a mask, and that's why, again, you've got IR missiles, you've got EM missiles. This is the whole reason for those, and the same thing will work with radar. But some of the passive stuff, again, like the whole player agency and just being able to set yourself up on the ship side, and Mark talked about the interference or the lack, or the stronger your signal is, the less that interference is going to affect you. So basically, if you can remove stuff from your ship or turn off things within the ship that are louder, that is your effectively a passive countermeasure, or effectively you're countering whoever else's scanner as best as you can right now. But the ECMs is going to come from chaff, and then further to that, I would hope that from an operator sort of scan position, we can do more. But in the meantime,
Claro, dice que ahora mismo solo sería interferencia de ambiente, ¿no? Y que podrías apagar ciertas cosas de la nave para evitar que te janeen o lo que sea, para tener menos emisión. En el futuro pondrán un operador de radar y pues espera que un operador de escáner, ¿no? Y que a partir de ahí pues que se puedan hacer más cosas.
exactly.
I'm just a particle effect. Leave me alone.
And of course, there are always,
Oh.
as a follow-up to that question, there are always the ships that come with, dedicated scan-resistant cargo compartments and stuff. The Mercury Star Runner, I think the Phoenix,
Like shielded cargo.
Exactly. One of the constellations is supposed to have a shielded area, stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so
and it
forth.
doesn't make you immune to the scan. All it does is it really increases the amount of interference. So it's going to take forever for the guy to actually scan you the whole way.
Yeah. So it's either going to take you longer, or it's for the different levels of scanners and stuff.
Claro, la idea es que no te haría inmune a escaneo, sino que esas contramedidas lo que haría es que le costase más al escanear, ¿no?
And that's a good note, actually, and it was part of the feature set, and it was part of the criteria that we set up the feature on, was that partial scans give you partial info, and actually depending on the interference there, you're only going to get a certain level of information off the ship. So for example, if there's a ton of interference, you're going to get the fact that it's a ship, maybe the name of the ship, maybe even the pilot, but you're not going to get anything else. You have no idea about the weapons.
Ajá, dice que además si haces una interferencia, claro, que podrías conseguir el piloto y tal, pero con esa interferencia no podrías conseguir ninguna información más que el nombre del piloto y demás, ni siquiera el nombre de la nave, tal vez, o solo el nombre de la nave.
Just a counter to that.
Well, yeah, that's the idea. And just feeding back to the player, that's what's really important to us, is that, people learn and play with the system because they've got feedback and they know what's happening. And this is the big thing that's changed just based on the old scanning. Like we used to have MFDs with little IM and EM IR graphs, but they weren't even, they were just flat numbers. There was no relative anything. So you knew it went up, but like, you don't know how much that really went up, why that matters. So there was no way to learn what the scanning was doing. So now it's a little more clear and immediately.
Claro, que antes con los números que nos daban las emisiones y demás no estaba claro, no había manera de aprender, o porque no estaban relacionados a algo que pudiera ser tangible para ti para poder adaptarte, ¿no?, a las cosas para uno mismo. Y que ahora con la nueva interfaz que sí, que será posible tener más conocimiento de lo que estás haciendo en base a las señales, etcétera.
All right, we are nearing the end, folks. let's do a biggie here. Let's talk long range scanning. This has been one of the questions that we've had in
Bueno, es hablar de escáner de largo alcance, ¿no? Escáner de largo alcance.
on the horizon and culling out things here and there. Somebody is on one server while I'm on another server and stuff like this. How are we working to prepare ourselves for that, to make sure scanning doesn't have to be completely redone again when that day comes?
Sure.
Cuando salga el server mesh, cuando ese día llegue, ¿qué estamos haciendo para poder prepararnos para no tener que hacer otra vez el escaneo, para poder hacer esos escáneres de larga distancia?
So before, the radar would kind of have a flat distance of how far it would see things, and that's it. And when you have your passive radar, basically your regular radar, that is only going to show you the things that are technically streamed in on your machine, because those are the stuff that are active. You could target it, you could shoot it, you could interact with it. Ping is mostly supposed to be the thing that says, hey, there's stuff out here that's maybe further out than your world view. They could be in our immediate release, a few dozen kilometers away, to where we want to go once we get server meshing in that, where there's a few 100,000 kilometers away. And what we're doing with the technology is when you ping out, we've changed the whole system to do an async query, so that once we have the API for server meshing ready, we could query the backend for find things that are of interest to the radar that you have, and then report it to you as a blob or even as a potential contact, depending on how.
Claro, están diciendo de que cuando salga el server meshing tendremos la habilidad de poder targetear incluso a objetivos o cosas, ¿no? Sugerencias que nos van a aparecer a más de 100.000 kilómetros de distancia. ¡Guau! Y que tienen preparada la tecnología para que eso pueda suceder.
And then proceed with more of the gameplay of pinging, and then eventually it comes on your contact and you can see it. That's where we're heading towards. So the immediate is replacing our existing systems and removing restrictions so that you can see things that are streamed in. And then once we have the server meshing technology there, we'll hook up those hooks so that we could uncover the information that's been streamed out and even across different servers, because it's in the local system, and then relay that to you into either.
Claro, incluso podían hacerlo a través de diferentes servidores dentro del server mesh y entregártela a ti esa información de lo que está sucediendo 100.000 kilómetros más adelante. Qué puta locura.
So that's where we're heading, and that's what the backend system for the radar scanning is utilizing to move towards, giving players the ability to find things further out.
Cool. All right, gentlemen. Well, that's it. It's 2:00 here local. It's the end of your tour duty this week. I got to let you go because I know you've got meetings and stuff to go to. Mark, Sean, as always, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with us.
Se acabó, chicos.
FPS and ship radar and scanning, everybody. It's been Starson Live. Be sure you check out ISC. Came out yesterday for some more information and an early look at some of the work in progress UI underway. And come back to ISC next week for a look at capacitors and operator modes. And
Inside Star Citizen para el modo operadores, capacitadores.
That's going to change the future of dogfighting combat. So I'm Jared. That's Sean. That's Mark. We'll see you later, everybody. Take care.
See you later.
Épico.
Bye.
Bye.
Cojonudo, chavales. Cojonudo. Cojonudo, joder. Cojonudo. Y ahora la prueba de fuego. Funcionará. A ver. El Dismon Star Citizen. ¿Cómo que el Dismon Star Citizen? ¿Cómo que Dismount en Star Citizen? ¿Pero qué coño es esto, tío? No era This Week. Alpha 3.13, Underground Infamy. Vale. Este lo sabemos, el referral bonus, el vídeo, el sistema de reputaciones, la Alpha 3.13.1, con las Hércules, la Invictus Long Week, Invictus Free Fly, Quantum Quasar and virtual. Ojo. Consigue una actualización, o sea, actualizaros, ¿no? En la arquitectura sistémica de Star Citizen, incluyendo la simulación Quantum, la cual conducirá al universo o manejará el universo, y algunas nuevas herramientas y tecnología que mejorará y extenderá la experiencia de Star Citizen. ¡Chon, chon, chon! Hostia, tío. Y se viene un parchaco de la hostia. Se viene un Es verdad, el arquitecto de Matrix, tío. Ahí está, tío. Es él, tío. A ver, vamos a ver si consigo entrar al juego, chicos. Porque sería la hostia. Yo no voy a tocar nada. No voy a borrar ni carpeta user ni hostias. Voy a entrar sin tocar nada, tío. Y si no, pues borro la carpeta user.